You do not have to have a buyer's agent to purchase a home. That is the main thing that I want for every home buyer to know and to get out of this episode is that you do not have to have your own agent to successfully buy a home. And in fact, there's a lot of reasons why you might not want an agent. But here's the thing. Most people are not aware of that reality, that they could figure out how to navigate the home buying process, could save themselves tens of thousands of dollars and enjoy greater control over the home buying process. And the reason that most people don't know this is because realtors over the last 3 or 4 decades have run one of the greatest psyops in history, which has communicated to home buyers that you would be a fool to try and buy a house without an agent. And it's made you dependent upon them. And one of the greatest lines that buyers agents have used to convince consumers to hire them is they have said, well, of course you want to hire me. It's a free service to you. The seller pays me, not you, the buyer. But this is obviously a load of crock. I mean, we know that now because last year there was a massive lawsuit against the National Association of Realtors, in no small part because buyers agents made this false claim that their services were free to the buyer. There are no two ways about it. When you have a buyer's agent, whether it's the seller paying or you paying, that agent is adding anywhere between 2 and 3% to the total cost of the transaction. And may I remind you, as a home buyer, you are the only one bringing any money to the table. So even if the seller says, oh, sure, I'll offer a concession or I'll pay the buyer's agent, they are accounting for how much they're having to pay that agent in whatever price they are willing to accept for the home. So just by removing the buyer's agent alone, you are functionally reducing transaction costs by whatever that commission percentage would be, which either saves you significant money or it makes your offer more competitive by 2 to 3% than somebody else who has a buyer's agent that needs to be paid. So the financial benefit alone is really significant. But there's also the piece of there have been so many stories of buyer agents acting badly, acting against what's in the best interests of their own client, the buyer, because these are commission hungry agents. That's how they survive and put bread on their table and keep a roof above their head. They want to and need to sell homes. And sometimes their need to sell a home overrides their ability to give you the kind of counsel that you need about either purchase price or when it's time to walk away from a deal. And I have had so many conversations with DIY home buyers who come to me because of ways that they've been burned by agents in the past. Now, I'm not saying that all agents are bad, but I am saying that of the 1.5 million agents in the United States, there are a lot of bad ones. And the likelihood of you finding one of the best ones is actually relatively low. It was less than 21% of agents that even sold a single house last year. Most agents are not very good, not very professional. They don't really have that great of an education or grasp of what's happening in the market. And these are all just major concerns of mine and why I now do what I do, the realtor that teaches people how to buy a home without a realtor. It sounds crazy, but it's a way that I've found that I can add more value and create the kind of positive change that I want to see in the world, more specifically within the real estate market. So my name is Nick. I am the host of the DIY Homebuyer podcast, part of the DIY Homebuyer Academy and community. But in this episode, we're going to dive into the 8 things that self-represented homebuyers need to know. And we're going to start with number 1, which is really just defining what is a self-represented buyer, or as I like to call them, DIY home buyers. So a realtor is actually going to call a self-represented buyer an unrepresented buyer. And this, again, just shows how realtors get to dictate the language on these kinds of things. I don't even know what exactly an unrepresented buyer is, other than that it has a very negative connotation. But I've never met somebody who is unrepresented unrepresented. I have met people who are choosing to represent themselves, which is frankly the way that we make most all purchases in life, whether that's going to the dealership and buying a car or even just going into the grocery store. Like, you are representing yourself, which means you're taking full responsibility for whatever decisions you make, the products that you put in your cart, the car that you drive off of the lot. You are the one that's doing the research. You're the one that's reviewing the legal documents, negotiating the deal, signing on the dotted line, getting the keys at the end of the day. You're not bringing in an agent to help you make those decisions or who stands in front of you as your spokesperson that's negotiating on your behalf. That's very uncommon in most all other areas of life. So the fundamental way that we participate in the market as consumers is generally as self-represented consumers, self-represented buyers. So that's the category that I'm just wanting to create of when we're talking about unrepresented, self-represented, DIY home buyer. It's all the same thing to say that you're not hiring an agent to be your mouthpiece or to handle parts of the transaction for you. You are the one who is truly in the driver's seat, handling and taking responsibility for everything yourself. That's not to say that you don't involve other professionals. You could involve me as a coach that's helping you navigate the process and look out for different pitfalls, helping you understand contingencies, negotiation strategies. You can hire a real estate attorney that just makes sure every I is dotted and T is crossed, and you've got full understanding of the legal documents and contracts involved in real estate. You should hire a home inspector. If you're getting a loan, hiring a lender, title company, perhaps an escrow agent. All of these are different parties outside of just a realtor that will help you succeed as a home buyer, but they're doing so from a much more neutral perspective because they're either getting paid hourly or paid by the service that they provide. And so they're not nearly as incentivized as a typical buyer's agent would be to make sure that you close on a deal. You're not going to get the same degree of weird pressure to move forward and to close quickly as many people experience with a buyer's agent. So hopefully that just kind of gives a clear idea of here's what we're talking about when it comes to being a self-represented buyer, moving forward without an agent. So you decide, all right, I'm open to that. I'd like to save money. I'd like more control. Great. I'll be a DIY home buyer. Now what? Well, the first thing that you should do is make sure that you are financially prepared to buy a home. And this means if you are needing to take a loan, that you start to interview good lenders. And I always recommend talking to at least 3 different lenders, and with the ones that you like, going through the pre-approval process, because every lender is going to have different specialties, access to slightly different programs that their banks or financial institutions have created and allowed. Some lenders are going to be more familiar with like first-time homebuyer programs. Some are going to be more familiar with jumbo loans. Some are going to be more creative when it comes to if you've got a unique financial situation, they'll be better equipped to work with that. But I always recommend having somebody that's local. I don't like the big call center mortgage companies like a Rocket or a Loan Depot. Of course, they've got competitive rates because they're operating at such a high volume. But I often find that whatever potential savings you're going to get on the rate there, it may actually cost you because of hiccups, headaches, errors that they have in their underwriting process that delay closing, and in some cases have even costed people the home that they're wanting to buy. So I think it's far better if you've got like a credit union or a local lender that you're able to meet with in their office, establish rapport, and you really want to see that lender as somebody that is in your corner, that they understand what your financial goals are, how long you're planning to be in the home, and they're able to recommend loan types, down payment amounts, all of those things, and tailor whatever loan product they suggest to your unique situation. You want that kind of level of service, and you want to talk with multiple lenders so that you can see how their fees work out, what the interest rate looks like, what the total cost of each loan option is. And you can leverage these different loan sheets against one another to, again, try and negotiate the best possible deal for yourself, because you will see that, okay, this lender gives me the lowest interest rate, but this lender gives me the lowest fees. Well, what if you have these two lenders competing for your business so that the one that has the lowest interest rate might drop their fees as well to match the other people, or vice versa? The people with the lowest fees might find a way to sharpen the pencil and bring down the interest rate. It's amazing how often that happens, but the only way that that really happens is if you have the leverage of a competing offer from a lender. So if you are getting a loan, I always say shop multiple lenders, find the very best possible deal, and really you want to work with somebody that you feel good about, that you trust and like, and that you know is like they're going to be in your corner through this process. Now, if you're not having a lender, then you don't really need to worry about the pre-approval letter, but you will need a proof of funds. And so this is really just getting on letterhead from your financial institution that you're planning to pull funds from, asking them to write up a letter for you that just says, so-and-so has X amount of funds available for their home purchase, and then the contact information of the banker. And oftentimes a banker will just even send this to you as a Word document, because if you know what the maximum amount is in that account, then you can change the proof of funds for each home that you're looking at. Similar with a pre-approval letter, a lot of lenders will allow you to modify that. They'll tell you, hey, your maximum is 1.5 million, but maybe you're looking at a home that's 1.3, and they'll allow you to just change the number to the 1.3 million. So anyhow, that's just to save you from having to get a new pre-approval or new proof of funds for every individual home that you want to look at. But the point here is that before you start shopping seriously, you do need to have your pre-approval letter or your proof of funds letter in order to be taken seriously by listing agents and sellers. If you want access to homes, the sort of ticket to being taken seriously as a buyer is having those documents ready to go. Plus, having those documents is just going to give you so much more confidence that, all right, I've figured out my budget. I know what I'm comfortable with spending. And I've talked with too many buyers who jumped the gun. They set up their Zillow search. They're starting to get excited about homes. They find something that's $2.3 million, and they're like, yep, I'm going to buy this. I love it. And lo and behold, then they go and talk with a lender. And because rates were higher than they thought, or there was income that didn't count towards their qualification, they were only approved for 1.7. And this happens at lower price points as well, where somebody's shopping $800,000 homes, but they're actually only approved for $600,000 homes. It's just like, don't start getting yourself excited about houses that you don't actually know for sure you can afford. Take care of the financial piece first. So, what do you do after you've got your pre-approval or your proof of funds? You're going to start to research areas and set up your home search. There's a number of websites that I really like for this. Niche.com is probably my favorite, where they kind of give a report card to every area, community, neighborhood, even sometimes like subdivisions within a certain city or town. And they talk about what's happening within the population, what the economics look like, how good the schools are, what the sort of percentage of renters versus homeowners, all of those like statistics and whatnot that help you research an area are on a site like niche.com. But you really want to start to figure out where you want to live and optimizing your search. The golden rule of real estate will always hold true. It is all about location, location, location. And again, it's all too easy as a buyer to get emotionally wrapped up in finding homes on Zillow and just being clicking around all over a major metropolitan area, and you find some that it's like, wow, this has beautiful finishes and it was so nicely remodeled, or it's basically a brand new home, and it seems like it is priced so low relative to other homes that are in similar condition. Well, I'll tell you the reason that it's priced low. It's because of the area, that whether it's that there's higher crime, that there's not as great of schools, that there's some other development or factors that are going on there that make it so that the market just won't pay as much. And the thing that I'll tell you is this: buying the right home in the wrong location is never the right move. Buying the wrong home in the right location is a whole lot easier to fix because, again, this is painfully obvious, but you cannot move where a home is located, right? So, like, if you buy the right home, but it's in the wrong location, and you're either losing equity because of the deterioration of that area, you don't feel safe there, you don't like the schools there, like, no matter how much you love that home, I'm telling you, you're going to be eager and ready to sell it as soon as possible to get into an area that you love more, versus buying even a home that doesn't check all of your boxes, but the location is right. Well, you can always make modifications to a home. You can add on to it. You can make cosmetic improvements. You can replace a roof. All of those things are very doable, but you can't change where the home is located. So that's why I do say that even before you set up your home search, you really want to figure out what areas you want your next home to be in and do your due diligence there so that you don't start getting yourself excited about homes that are in areas that you wouldn't actually want to live. So do research the areas as much as you can, get boots on the ground, talk with neighbors. So I said niche.com is good, areavibes.com, or even getting on to Nextdoor and seeing what's happening in community discussions. Reddit is another great place where you're able to find subreddits for local communities and start to ask questions of local residents about, hey, what do you think of this area? What do you make about that little airfield that's over there? Anyhow, there's so many great resources online, but you'll want to make sure that you're doing your due diligence on area. And then once you've figured out your area, that's when you can really hone in your housing criteria, where you're going through, all right, what are the things that are my must-haves, and setting up your home search that way. The home search is far more intuitive. I'm assuming that most all of you that are watching this have been on Zillow or Redfin or whatever your favorite platform is. You kind of know how to use the filters there. The only real caveat that I'll say is you set up your home search. Obviously, define your area pretty strictly. Don't look outside of the areas that you wouldn't actually want to live. And then number two is try and keep your must-haves list as short as possible. Don't say that a home must have a 3-car garage if in fact you would be okay. Like, you might prefer a 3-car garage, but if you found the perfect home in the perfect spot and it had a 2-car garage, if you would be okay with that, don't limit your search to only houses with 3-car garages, because you could miss out on some real diamonds in the rough. I would just say to keep that must-haves list as short as possible. Now, what are some good things on the must-haves list? If you know that you want a single level or a home that has a primary on the main so that you can age in place there or avoid having to do stairs if you ever had an injury or couldn't go up and down stairs, then make that a must-have. If you know that you want a flat, usable backyard where the kids can play soccer or play catch, and you know that needs to be minimum of a 1/4 acre, that's an absolutely legit must-have. If you know that you need 4 bedrooms, that's a good must-have as well. But a couple of real quick caveats on this. Some people will say, well, my house must have 3,000 square feet. And what I would say is always make sure that you kind of give yourself like about a 10% buffer, so that if you're saying, I need to have a 3,000 square foot home, set your search to about 2,700 square feet. Because one, there can be some discrepancies on measuring of square feet. I know that that's annoying, but it's true. But also, a floor plan makes a far greater impact on the livability of a home and how big a home feels than the actual square footage. Like I was in a house the other day where, I kid you not, the upstairs laundry room was about 500 square feet. Like it just felt like the biggest waste of space. And there was another where the secondary bathroom, it was huge. Like you could put down like a 6 foot by 4 foot rug in the middle of the bathroom. And this is like it was basically a powder bath, like with a toilet and a sink. And so, yeah, that adds to the total square footage of the house, but that doesn't mean that you want that much square footage in those rooms. So modify your search criteria so that you're seeing as much as is possible is really the goal. You don't want to miss out on homes that could work for you because you were too rigid in your must-have list. Moving right along, so you've set up your search, you've got your pre-approval letter. Now you find a property that you want to tour, but you're a self-represented buyer, so you don't have a buyer's agent that you call and say, hey, I want to see this one. Who do you call instead? Well, you call the listing agent. And this is where a lot of self-represented buyers get tripped up because they're uncomfortable, or it's a foreign thing to speak directly with the listing agent. But here's what I want you to remember about the listing agent. You, as a self represented buyer, are a customer to them. You're not a client. They don't represent you. They don't work for you. They work for the seller, but the seller has hired them to essentially be the salesperson on behalf of the seller. And so it is more than reasonable that that listing agent should show you a high level of customer service, right? Like, could you imagine walking into a dealership where you're buying even $100,000 car, which is going to be like a fifth, a sixth, a tenth of how much you're spending on a house? And if that salesperson for the dealership, like if they were rude or standoffish, or if they didn't want to help you, I mean, that would be crazy. And so good listing agents, when you contact them, they are going to see you as a customer, as somebody who is, especially once they know that you're educating yourself on the process, that you have your pre-approval letter, your proof of funds, you're ready to go. They're going to see you as like, wow, this is a qualified customer. And in service to my client, the seller, I want to serve this customer so that they have all the information that they need and they're able to get in and tour this house and decide whether or not they want to move forward and put in an offer. So if you're serious about a home, you're not putting the listing agent out to ask them to show you the house. Now, the few things that you want to make sure of is that you want to ask any initial questions up front that could rule the house out, like how busy is the traffic on the street, or how expensive is the HOA? As some HOAs can be cost prohibitive, or if there's anything in particular about the home that you know could disqualify it from your search, just ask those questions up front so that you're not wasting your time, the agent's time, the seller's time. But once you've asked those, then all you want to communicate to the listing agent is, hey, I'm representing myself. I would like to sign a non-agency disclosure, which again just really spells out the fact you acknowledge they represent the seller and that they're treating you exclusively as a customer. And then say, when can we tour the house? Now, listing agents, they are busy people and they are people. And so it's right to be respectful of that. So they might not be able to drop everything and meet you within the next hour, but within 12 to 24 hours, if you're a serious buyer, it will be a high priority for them to meet you. And if you find any resistance from a listing agent, which unfortunately does happen from time to time because there are some bad, crotchety, old listing agents out there that just are resistant to change. And by old, I don't mean necessarily that they're old people, but just that they have an old sort of mindset. If you run into those issues, one, I want to know about it and I'll help you work through that. But two, above them will be their managing broker or the real estate commission. And you can always file a complaint or report, or even just ask the agent, hey, I'm a qualified buyer here. Would your seller really be okay with you not being willing to show me the home? So you can push on that, but having that non-agency disclosure in place is huge, because you don't want for the listing agent to try and get you into a dual agency position where they're trying to represent both you and the seller. That never works. So make sure that there's no talk of dual agency. You also don't want to sign any sort of buyer agency agreement with them or with anybody else in their office. That would defeat the whole purpose of being self-represented, and it would entitle them to a commission, perhaps not even just on the one home that you're going to tour, but perhaps on any home that you look at. So those are a couple of things that I really want for you to be aware of. But in general, listing agents are going to be pretty cool, and they'll help you set up a time to tour. And really, as you're touring the home, the Realtor Code of Ethics does require that a listing agent answer any questions about the property, anything that's wrong with it that they are aware of or that the seller has disclosed. They need to answer those truthfully and to the best of their knowledge and ability. Like as you're looking at the house, if you notice any cracks in the foundation, to ask about those things, to ask if there's been repairs, ask about the age of the roof, the age of the mechanicals, ask about if you see any discoloration on the walls or in the ceiling, if there's been any water damage or any water in the crawl space or flooding, or all of those things are fair game to ask about the condition of the home, and even to some degree the neighborhood. Now, there's not a lot that agents can say about demographics, about crime, about schools, because of rightfully fair housing laws. But whatever they can answer, it's right to expect that they will answer. Now, don't ask them about, hey, do you think that the seller would take $10,000 less? Or, the agent can't do anything that would be financially detrimental to their seller. They're even limited in terms of how much they can share about the seller's position. But you can ask things about, like, hey, is there an ideal closing time? Like, does the seller need 30 days or longer? Do they need a rent back period? Like, you can figure out what would be ideal for the seller, and in terms of an offer. And that is all helpful to know should you move forward with the next steps and make an offer. So that leads us to the next piece of making an offer. You've toured the property, you've done your visual inspection. It seems like, okay, this is a home that I'm legitimately interested in. You've established yourself as a self-represented buyer, and now you're ready to move forward. How do you make an offer? And there's a few different ways to go about it. One is that you could use something like ChatGPT or online templates and put together an offer that way. Offers are actually quite simple. They need to be in writing. They need to have the purchase price, closing date. There needs to be some sort of consideration, which is usually, it's like a good faith deposit. Typically, it's earnest money, but you get to determine how much that is. So that's one way you could do it, just using an online template. I don't typically recommend that, but people have done it. They've been successful. The second way that you could do it is use a real estate attorney to help you draft up the offer, as well as talk you through the different contingencies that you may want to include in that offer. They could draft that up a completely original draft, or they may have access to the Realtor standardized forms. So you could talk with a real estate attorney. That is a very good option. Most commonly, though, you'll work directly with the listing agent on that offer. Again, listing agents are allowed to help you put together an offer. Now, they're limited in what kind of advice they can give on the terms. They can tell you what the seller wants, but they can't help you with negotiation strategy. But they can perform like ministerial or clerical duties where they explain, here's what each part of the contract means. They can explain the language that's in the contract. I mean, they're familiar with these documents because they're standardized forms that are basically fill in the blank. So they've hopefully at least read through them before, can clarify things like computation of time. But you are going to be the one that needs to drive the conversation about the contingencies to include, like your inspection contingency, your title contingency, if you're financing the house, the financing contingency, as well as if it's like a big property, you might want to have a survey contingency in there as well. And these are all things that we do like a deep dive on in the school community that I have for DIY home buyers. This is also an area where if we're working together one-on-one, I make sure you understand what all your contingencies are, and we talk about negotiation strategy and how to get the best possible deal while protecting yourself when making an offer on a home. But it's also in this offer where your self-represented status is going to be reflected, and where you'll be able to negotiate in that savings for yourself, whether that's taking a percentage off of the purchase price or whether that's asking for a seller credit towards your closing costs or loan costs, because again, you don't have an agent, since you're not bringing that party to the transaction that most likely the agent or the seller was planning to offer some sort of compensation to, or planning to offer a buyer some sort of credit. Well, you want to make sure you're taking advantage of that credit, but that instead of it going to a costly agent, it's going to benefit you. But don't be too intimidated by the idea of putting together an offer. Yeah, sometimes these documents, there can be a lot of them, but don't let the sheer number of pages. Most of it is just boilerplate legalese. The fundamentals of putting together an offer actually quite straightforward, and this shouldn't be anything that's too scary. So you'll put all that together. You'll send it to the listing agent, who will present it to the seller. Really, what I should say is, if you're working with the listing agent, they'll make sure that everything is complete, that you have an understanding of what it is that you're offering. Digitally sign it through DocuSign, and then the listing agent will present it to their seller, and you'll have a expiration date of that offer. So the seller should get back to you before that expiration date, and hopefully they say yes. It's possible that they just flat out reject it. It is also possible that they counter with the terms that they want to see. If they counter, that just constitutes basically a brand new offer. It voids the original one that you did. And now you're free to either say, yep, I'm good with that counter, or to continue to negotiate, or to walk away altogether. But hopefully they just say yes. And if they do say yes, well, what happens next? Next is that we start going through the whole escrow process. So in escrow, this is really the whole period from when you have a mutually accepted contract until closing, when you actually get the keys for your new home. And this is also considered like the due diligence period, where all of your contingencies that you have are now in effect to protect yourself. Usually, one of the first obligations that you're going to have during the escrow period is turning your earnest money deposit in to either the brokerage, the seller's agent's brokerage, or ideally to a title company that's going to hold that money in escrow. So generally, that's going to be about a 3-day period to get that earnest money in. That'll be spelled out in your purchase and sale agreement. But that's the first deadline, that if you don't meet that deadline, you terminate the contract just by default. So make sure you get your earnest money in. And then your inspection contingency. I always recommend having an inspection contingency, but usually these contingencies are only about 7 to 14 days to perform your inspections. So it's really important that you hire an independent home inspector to come out within the first few days of being under contract. And a whole home inspector, they're going to do a thorough inspection of the entire exterior, give a report about the siding, the foundation. They'll get up on the roof, talk about the condition of the roof, the vents, any issues that they see there. They're also going to do a thorough inspection on the interior, where they're going to run every single faucet, test every outlet and every switch. They're going to look for any signs of leaks or any damage to the home, they're going to go down into the crawl space, up into the attic space. They'll note if there's any like warping of wood or issues with the flooring itself. They'll test appliances to a degree. Usually things like a refrigerator, they don't test, but dishwasher and oven, those are things that they'll look at. But it just gives you a really comprehensive picture of what's going on with the home. It'll also tell you if there are any issues that need a specialist to come out and take a look. So if the home inspector goes up into the attic and they see that, okay, there's some organic growth up here, they're typically not qualified to say, oh, yep, this is mold, but they will say, this is something that you want to have checked out further. Similarly, if there's cracks in the foundation, they might just say, this is concerning, you should have a foundation specialist come out. And those are inspections that you need to have done during that original inspection contingency window as well. So this is why it's so important to have your whole home inspector come out, so that if they do say you need additional inspections, you've still got some buffer time to have those specialists come out. Now, if there's anything that comes up during that inspection period that fundamentally changes the value proposition, like the home needs a new roof, that's going to cost you $25,000, and you weren't accounting for that in the purchase price that you offered, well, now you've got the opportunity to renegotiate or to walk away from the deal and get your earnest money back. So this is why contingencies like the inspection contingency are so important, because, and I've seen where home buyers have been able to either negotiate the seller putting on a new roof prior to closing or giving a $20,000 to $25,000 credit, usually some of that taken off the purchase price and some of it taken off the closing costs. But this is your opportunity to really negotiate and make sure that you're getting a fair deal. And this is a powerful time, because once the home is under contract, sellers generally don't want to have to go back on market and find another buyer. Their days on market continue to accumulate. Whatever you find in the inspection, if you do turn over a request for a new roof because the issues were discovered, now that's something that they've got to disclose to future buyers. So other buyers are going to likely run into the same issues. Anyhow, in most cases, many cases, it's better for the seller to try and work something out with you rather than go back on market. So you actually have quite a bit of leverage as a buyer to negotiate a very good deal for yourself. And then you have things like your title contingency, which just makes sure that the seller does have legal rights to sell the property. It tells you if there's any easements or any other land or mineral rights that others could have claim to on the property. If there's any questions about these things, you have the title company to call and talk with, or if we're working together one-on-one, you can talk with me. But really, it's just under this whole escrow period is knowing what these timelines are, staying organized, making sure that you hit your deadlines, and making sure that you're staying in compliance with the terms of the contract, so that that'll even spell out how you make your requests for repairs or credits to the seller. And you want to make sure that you adhere to those to the very T of the law, because if you give too much information or send over the entire inspection report and the contract says that you can't do that, well, then you waive that inspection contingency. So it is something to be taken really seriously. Don't be casual about these contingencies. But the escrow period is really just working through all of those, as well as giving your lender time to do all of the underwriting process and appraise the home and make sure that things are good on that front as well. But as long as you're organized, navigating escrow is pretty straightforward and smooth. And then it's at the end of escrow that you get your closing or settlement statements. All right, here's all of the closing costs and fees related to taxes and property insurance, any sort of pre-funding of your homeowner's insurance or prepaids for taxes, title and escrow fees, recording fees. All of those things will be spelled out. You want to review that, make sure that there's no surprises, how much money you need to bring to the closing table, how much is going to the seller, any concessions concessions or credits that the seller is giving, like the 3% that they're giving you for not having a buyer's agent. But then you sign, do a final walkthrough before you sign. I should mention that sooner, but if the seller does agree to do any sort of repairs, or even if they don't, ideally the same day, no sooner than the day before you sign, you should walk through the house again just to make sure that there aren't any new issues or repairs. I've done several videos on the importance of a final walkthrough. But as long as everything looks good, then sign, and congratulations, you've got yourself a house. And it's a house that now you saved money on by not having an agent. It's a house that you know way better than you would have if you were dependent upon an agent the entire time, because you went through the whole process in the driver's seat firsthand. You've just got a great understanding. And now you've also got the confidence and skill to represent yourself on every future transaction. So let's just say that you bought a $700,000 home. You saved yourself $21,000 by not having an agent. And whether it's as an investment property or just in another 5 years, you're ready to move up to another home that's $1 million. Well, again, by being able to save that 3%, that's another 30 grand, $51,000 now over the course of 5 years that you're able to save yourself simply because you learned how to navigate this process and represent yourself. That is massive money. And again, I think more and more buyers are waking up to the benefits of learning how to self-represent. And if that's something that you want to do, but you want to have somebody that's in your corner, well, I do offer direct one-on-one coaching. It's different from agency. I'm not there attending the inspections or touring houses with you. I'm there to help you strategize, know how to talk with listing agents, know what to look out for as you're touring homes. I'm there to help you with setting up your searches. I'm there to help you go through your inspection report, know what's reasonable to ask for, how to negotiate those things. I'm there to help keep you organized, make sure that you don't miss any of the deadlines. I'm there to make sure that you don't get burned by what you don't know. But if that's something that would be interesting to you, that's a service that I offer at a fraction, truly just a fraction of the cost of a traditional buyer's agent. And for most people, it's a no-brainer. Now, I'm one person. I don't have the capacity to work with everybody, but I've got about room for 10 different people a month that I can work with. Right now, I've got a few slots that are still available. So if you want to talk more about that, just shoot me an email, nick@DIYHomebuyerAcademy.com. You'll see the link in the description below, and love to set up a time to talk further and see if that's a good fit for us. Thank you all so much, as always, for listening to the show. One more reminder, please do subscribe and share. Let me know what questions you still have, anything that you feel like I missed in the comments. Join us in the school community, and we'll see you in the next one.